Assalamu alaikum dear audience, this is Sanobar Sultan and here I am with another video, but this time this video is slightly different as compared to my previous topics. I'm going to be dealing with a historical figure and I will be discussing that figure, but you might be a little surprised by who I have chosen to discuss. The topic or the personality under discussion would be Genghis Khan, or Genghis Khan as he is known in the West. Now you might wonder why Genghis Khan. The answer is simply that I recently read a book on Genghis Khan. So the book was by Jack Weatherford. It was called Genghis Khan and the Making of the Modern World. So coming straight to the point, I don't want to narrate a history of Genghis Khan, because for that you can watch any documentary or you can read any book. What I want to do is do 5 takeaways from his biography, from his life, and see how that impacts the way we can perhaps learn some lessons from it. So those 5 areas that I will be discussing include, firstly, the power of the brutal reputation, his reputation and the impact it has. Secondly is administration. Thirdly is his family life. Fourthly is the divine mission. And fifthly, the last point, is the global impact he and his lineage has had. So the first point, and you know, this video could be very useful for people who are pursuing a degree in history or are simply history buffs, or a master's in history or an MPhil in history or a bachelor's in history. So I hope this would help you. So the thing is that, to come straight to the point, what was his brutal reputation? Now, he is responsible, Genghis Khan is said to be responsible for over 40 million deaths globally. And furthermore, there's a new study that shows that 1 out of every 200 people in the world are directly related to Genghis Khan. That means he conquered so much land, and with that came, you know, a lot of women. So that means, you know, I or any of the audience members listening could be a direct descendant of Genghis Khan. I mean, 1 in 200 is a very big, you know, number to be directly related to Genghis Khan. So among other things, what he would do that shows how brutal he was, how, you know, his reputation was that he used to boil people alive as a tactics of punishment. And of course, you know, if you're boiled alive, you would die. So, you know, to torture your war prisoners to death, to create that fear among the rest of those to not stand up to the emperor. And once he would conquer land, he would use those people he had conquered, even citizens, as human shields to conquer more land. What human shields mean is that you put another human being in front of the soldier, so that if an arrow comes, that will hit the civilian and not the soldier. The soldier will be safe. And once it's known that he was so brutal that once he killed of a specific tribe, every male who was more than 3 feet tall. So he killed all the men of that specific tribe. And furthermore, you know, he conquered a Muslim empire, which was called the Khwarizm tribe, which the Khwarizm dynasty actually. The Khwarizm dynasty was actually spread across Turkestan, Persia, which is modern day Iran, and Afghanistan. And what happened was that the Khwarizm dynasty killed one of his diplomats, Genghis Khan's diplomats. And Genghis Khan, in revenge, he literally ended the Khwarizm tribe. So Genghis Khan is responsible for ending the Khwarizm tribe and he did it in such a brutal way that people knew that he had, that he was responsible for it. Now, why have I narrated this long list of his brutality? And what lesson can we learn from it? The lesson for present life is, to put it very crudely, do not bluff. What do I mean by that? I mean that mean what you say. There is evidence when Genghis Khan, he invaded the tribes which would now constitute China. People were so scared of his reputation, they had heard so much about it that they didn't even put up a fight, because they knew his principles. He knew that if they started a fight, if they went into battle, Genghis Khan was so brutal, it was going to end in the most gruesome way. So his reputation actually preceded him, because he, walked the talk. So my understanding is about not bluffing is that you should walk the talk, because if you bluff about something and somebody calls out your bluff, it's like your words have no credibility. It's like, you could say anything and people would be like, oh, he or she always says things, they never mean what they say. So to add credibility to what you say, if you say something, you should mean it. Or you say that I will do this or I will do that, you should mean it. So you should know what you're talking about before you commit to something or you say something. Now, the second aspect that I mentioned out of the 5 is administration. Now, what was Genghis Khan's administration? The number 1 point in the administration was meritocracy. Now, what happened was Genghis Khan didn't put his generals everywhere. What he did was he took the best brains in the empire, be they Chinese, Persian, anybody from the Muslim community, anybody, and if they were competent enough, he would put them at the top positions. That is meritocracy. It didn't matter which religion they came from, which ethnicity they came from. If they were competent enough, if they could get the job well done, he would put them on top. Secondly is that he created new systems such as the mail system. Mail meaning the postage system. So his rule was such that if you were to mail a secret letter to somebody, it would be surely to reach that person and nobody would open it. So he actually, you can say, created the mail system itself. And the third is the cultural expansion to the West. Many say he didn't conquer the West as such, but a lot of things that he culturally propagated, for example, from the Chinese, eventually led to the Renaissance of the West several, centuries later, such as gunpowder, these sort of other things, compass, and the cultural expansion that happened. So he is responsible for that. There were tax exemptions also that he gave to some religions and some professional leaders as well. So he, even though he came from a tribal or nomadic structure eventually, but he understood the concept and the working of a city life or of a settled life, as you may call it. And you can say there was a certain degree of religious tolerance as well. As I mentioned, that it didn't matter which religion you came from, there was meritocracy in the society, but nobody could be above Genghis Khan, or there was a code of law in their system which was called the Yasa Code of Law, YASA. And the Yasa Code of Law was that was supreme. So you could be religiously affiliated to any religion, but you couldn't go above the law. Now, also another thing that he did was that he put local administrators. Now, local administrators mean that he didn't directly rule the communities he conquered, but what he used to do was that he would hire the local administrators and keep them under his tutelage. So he controlled them, but he let them reign over the population that they were already ruling. Now, what is the lesson for the present time about his administration? Number one is that you should accept merit as the best form of advancement. If you want your society to advance, you have to get the best brains. Whatever ethnicity, whatever religion, whatever caste, whatever social class they come from, if you accept meritocracy, it's going to lead to advancement of society. Secondly is that you should accept plurality as a strength, meaning diversity as a strength. If there are different ethnicities in your country, this should not be seen as a fragmentation of society, or this shouldn't be seen as a weakness, but rather you should see diversity as strength. You know, in diversity we stand united, that's what they say. So that is what you should do. Thirdly is that people have an affinity with their local chieftains or the rulers. So if you conquer a territory, let the local leaders stay. Let them continue working. And you can have direct linkage with the chieftains themselves, but sometimes people respond aggressively if the conquerors try to directly intervene in the local administration. So those are the lessons for local administration. Thirdly is his family life. Now this might be a little, I would give a disclaimer, but I would mention that there was the way that the nomadic system used to work was that if somebody was powerful enough, they could take the wife of any other man and make them their own wife. So, for example, his own mother was actually kidnapped by his father. She was previously married to somebody else, and then he was born. Uh, After that, he was the firstborn. And his own wife, Borte, she was eventually also kidnapped by another ruler, by another chieftain. And what he did was that he waged a war against that chieftain. He got his wife back. And what happened was that a son was born 9 months later. So we weren't sure who was the father of the child, but Genghis Khan accepted that boy as his own child. And but here's another story, that that child was not allowed to rule after Genghis Khan, because then Borte bore him 4 more sons and he gave them the reign, not the firstborn child. And when Genghis Khan was 9 years old, his father was poisoned by a rival Tartar uh, tribe. And when he grew up to take revenge from them, he took the revenge in the most brutal way. And the 3 feet tall story I was telling you about, where he made sure that every boy above the height of 3 feet was killed, that was when he avenged his father's death in the most brutal way. And his 4 sons, eventually the land that Genghis Khan conquered was distributed among his 4 sons, and they further grew up the empire. Now, what is the lesson for the present life? The lesson for the present life is that power and family go side by side. And you have to know that your strength lies in a close-knit family structure. Because it was, after all, his sons and grandchildren who conquered even more land. And if Mughals, the ones who eventually ruled over the subcontinent, are said to be directly descendants of the Mongols. And why they're called Mughals is because the Mongols eventually converted to Islam much later than Genghis Khan. But there's a very slight, if you can say that, I told you that Genghis Khan conquered the Khwarizm, Muslim Khwarizm dynasty, ended them, and eventually his own lineage converted to Islam eventually. So the fourth point was divine mission. Now, interestingly, Genghis Khan's name was at birth not Genghis Khan. His name was Temujin. So Genghis Khan's birth name is Temujin. Genghis Khan was his title actually, and he was given this title by his local people, by people who admired him, and Genghis Khan means universal leader. Now, Genghis Khan, the universal leader, is not only has political importance, but it has spiritual importance for those around him. It means the representation of, quote, eternal blue sky, unquote. Those people, they used to worship the eternal blue sky, and they considered Genghis Khan the representative of God on earth. And Genghis Khan, because he believed that he had a divine mission, that he was actually sent by God to conquer all the world, so he was able to unify all the tribes around him. Furthermore, there's a story about it that when Genghis Khan was born, he had a blood clot in his hand, which meant that he was destined for greatness. So, there's this concept of divinity to his greatness that he felt he had since childbirth. Now, what is the present learning that we can get out of it? Now, the present belief is simply self-belief. You should believe in your own self. And it's this divine mission is actually used by all superpowers, such as the British. They came up with the concept of white man's burden, if you've heard about it, or you should Google about it. White man's burden simply meant that we have to educate the rest of the races because the white race is superior. And of course, the spread of liberal democracy, we have to spread democracy to the world. They actually think there's a divine mission to it, that they are responsible. They feel responsible to spread democracy in the world, the West I'm talking about, in recent decades. So yes, people actually believe that there is a divine intervention in the way they deal with their outlook of life. Now, the last point, the fifth point, is the global impact of Genghis Khan and his lineage. Now, I mentioned to you earlier that he defeated the Muslim empire Khwarizm, as well as the tribes in what is now modern day China. And at its peak, the Mongol Empire was the largest empire in the world. It spanned from Poland to Vietnam to Syria to Korea. So, it's a very, very vast empire. And his descendants, Kublai Khan and others, they went even further and they conquered even more land. Now, what's the present day lesson, you can say, and is that, his impact is so much, Genghis Khan, that even today parents name their children as Genghis. I'm sure you must have heard, especially in the subcontinent. And even though you don't know his life story, but everybody has heard about him. Now, what is the present that we can learn for our present life? It is that ambition, self-belief, and divine luck, when these three things combine, they can lead you to uncharted territory and you can create new history. So you should believe in yourself, you should believe that divine help will come, and you should be ambitious about anything that you want to do in your life. So I'm coming to the conclusion of my video, and the question lies now, which I will leave to the audience itself, is that do you think Genghis Khan was a brutal leader, or do you think that he was a tactful leader who led his own people from a nomadic structure and led to an entirely big empire? So that's for you to decide. But we can always learn from other people's mistakes or other people's greatness and apply them to our own lives. So I hope you have enjoyed this video, and I'm considering doing more about historical figures. So this might be interesting for history buffs or other people, you know. Even if you're not a history buff, you can watch my channel, and I'm sure you'll learn new things from it. So I will see you guys next week, inshallah. Till then, bye bye.